She thought her life was over the night her husband threw her out and called her barren and a failure. For years, she hid her tears, rebuilt her strength, and disappeared from everyone who once mocked her. But destiny was quietly preparing a comeback no one saw coming. Because one afternoon, an unexpected wedding invitation arrived from the very man who broke her. The invitation wasn't sent out of love, but something far darker. What happened next will leave you speechless. If you're just joining us, please like, share, and subscribe for more emotional African stories filled with suspense, betrayal, and shocking twists. Let's begin. When Esther married Femi, people said their union was a match made in heaven. They were young, ambitious, and deeply in love. Femi was a gifted tech engineer working with a software company in Abuja, while Esther taught in a private primary school nearby. They had met during a church seminar and instantly clicked. Both God-fearing, both dreamers. Their wedding was beautiful, small but full of laughter. Femi had looked at her that day and promised, "You'll never shed tears under my roof." Esther had smiled shyly, believing every word. For the first few months, their marriage felt like paradise. They prayed together every morning, shared one plate at dinner, and planned their future in whispers under the ceiling fan. They dreamed of building a home filled with children's laughter. Esther often talked about the names she would give their first twins. Afunanya and Chibuzor Femi would tease her, "Let's have one first before you start naming a football team." But as months passed, those sweet jokes faded into silence. 1 year, no pregnancy. 2 years, still nothing. At first, Femi comforted her. "Maybe it's just stress," he said, holding her at night. But soon, comfort turned to coldness. He began to come home later, speaking less, eating alone. Esther noticed the distance growing like a wall between them, but she kept trying, cooking his favorite meals, praying longer, fasting quietly. The whispers from family began next. His mother was the loudest. "Femi, how long will you stay with that woman?" she asked one Sunday evening when Esther was at church. 2 years and not even a single miscarriage? You are the only son. Don't let that barren woman ruin your lineage." Femi tried to defend his wife. "Mama, please, stop calling her that." But his mother hissed, "When you finally realize, don't say I didn't warn you." From that day, things changed. Femi became distant. He stopped joining her in prayer. Whenever she mentioned visiting the hospital again, he got irritated. "You've done all the tests, haven't you? Nothing changes. What's the point?" Esther begged him, "Please, let's go together this time. Maybe the problem isn't me." He turned sharply. "What are you trying to say? That I'm the problem?" "No, Femi, Enough," he shouted, slamming his phone on the table. "I'm fine. You're the one who can't conceive." Her heart shattered. She stood there speechless, tears blurring her sight. From that night, he stopped touching her. The bed that used to be warm turned into 2 separate corners of silence. Esther cried every night, praying under her breath for a miracle. Then came humiliation. At a family gathering, his mother said loudly, "Some women only came to eat in their husband's house, not to give them heirs." Everyone laughed. Femi said nothing. That night, Esther confronted him. "Why didn't you defend me?" He shrugged. "What should I have said? It's the truth, isn't it?" Those words sliced through her like a knife. Weeks later, she found out through a friend that Femi had been confiding in another woman at work. A lady named BC Esther asked him calmly, "Who is she?" He sneered, "Someone who doesn't nag me about babies." It was like fire spreading through her chest. She fell on her knees. "Femi, please, don't let this marriage die. We promised God." He laughed bitterly. "God? Maybe God doesn't even want us together. Maybe you're cursed." That night, Esther couldn't sleep. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at their wedding photo on the wall. 2 happy faces smiling at a future that had vanished. The next morning, she packed her things. Femi didn't even look up from his phone. "Where are you going?" he asked casually. "To my sister's place. Maybe distance will help you see what you're losing." He chuckled coldly. "Don't bother, you can stay there, I'm done." She froze, the pain too heavy to breathe. "You're divorcing me?" "Yes," he said bluntly. "I can't continue living like this. You can't give me a child. I need a family." Esther dropped her bag and fell to her knees, weeping uncontrollably. "Femi, don't do this. We can still try. Please. But he turned away, his heart hardened. Go, Esther. Go and find whatever it is you're looking for. That afternoon she left, broken, barefoot and how. As she stepped into the busy street, rain began to fall. She had nowhere to go, no strength to fight. The world looked blurry through her tears. At her sister's house in Lagos, she collapsed into her sister's arms. He said, I'm cursed, she whispered. Her sister held her tight. No, my dear, you're not cursed. You're just walking through fire. And fire doesn't destroy gold. It refines it. That night, Esther prayed one last desperate prayer. God, if you still see me, give me a reason to smile again. She didn't know that prayer would be the beginning of a transformation that would shake her ex-husband's world to its core. Lagos was loud, restless, and unforgiving, but Esther found comfort in its chaos. She moved into her sister's one-room apartment in Surulere, sleeping on a thin mattress near the window that overlooked the street. Every morning before dawn, she would rise quietly, wash her face with cold water, and whisper the same words to her reflection. God, help me start again. Her sister Ngozi ran a small roadside food stall and managed to get Esther a job at a catering company. It wasn't glamorous work, just long hours, heat, and the smell of smoke clinging to her clothes. But it paid enough to survive. Esther never complained. She smiled through exhaustion, always the last to leave and the first to arrive. The other workers admired her. That woman no day tire, one would whisper, always smiling even when life don't show her pepper. But behind that smile was a woman rebuilding her soul piece by piece. Every night after work, Esther knelt by the window, hands clasped, praying not for riches or revenge, but for peace. I don't understand, Lord, she would whisper, tears soaking her pillow. But if you still have a plan for me, please show me the way. Months passed slowly. Little rays of light began to pierce the darkness. One Sunday, her church announced a volunteer outreach for orphans and widows. Esther signed up immediately. Helping others gave her life new meaning. She washed clothes for the children, read stories to them, and prayed with widows who had lost everything. In their eyes, she saw a reflection of herself. People broken but still breathing. During one of those outreach events, fate introduced her to a man who would change her life forever. His name was Tade Adeoye, a billionaire tech entrepreneur and philanthropist who funded the charity. He was in his late 30s, calm and soft-spoken, wearing a simple white shirt and jeans. When he arrived, everyone rushed to greet him, but Esther quietly focused on serving food to the children. Tade noticed her. Unlike others who hovered around him for attention, she didn't seem impressed by wealth. Her focus was on the kids. When he walked closer, she smiled politely. Good afternoon, sir. Would you like some jollof rice? He chuckled. You serve like someone who owns the place. She blushed. No, sir. I just love helping where I can. Tade studied her face, gentle but strong. What's your name? Esther, she replied softly. He nodded slowly. You have a kind spirit, Esther. The world needs more of that. From that simple encounter, something began. Over the next few weeks, Esther continued volunteering. Tade's foundation sponsored more programs, and each time their paths crossed. She was always humble, organized, and full of quiet wisdom. One day he asked her to join the foundation as a logistics assistant. Esther hesitated. But I'm not qualified for such a big role. Tade smiled. You're more qualified than you think. Skills can be taught, character can't. And so a new chapter began. At the foundation, Esther quickly became indispensable. She coordinated events, managed teams, and kept projects running smoothly. People respected her, even the top executives. Tade often watched her from afar, amazed at how effortlessly she carried grace. One day after a meeting, he asked, You're always calm. How do you do it? She smiled. I've learned that storms can't drown you if your peace doesn't depend on the weather. He was silent for a moment. Those words hit him deeply. As months turned into years, their friendship grew. They talked about life, faith, and pain. One rainy evening, as they worked late, Tade finally asked what had happened in her past. Esther hesitated but spoke. I was married once. For years we tried to have a child. It never happened. He blamed me. His mother called me barren. He left. Her voice trembled, but she continued. I begged God for a child, but I realize now he was trying to give me a new life instead. Tade's eyes softened. You didn't deserve that. I did nothing to deserve it, she said quietly. But I learned rejection is not the end. Sometimes it's God's way of clearing the path for something better. That night, Tade couldn't stop thinking about her. She wasn't like any woman he'd met. She wasn't chasing fame or money. She carried peace like a crown. Soon their friendship turned into something deeper. They spent more time together, sharing meals, visiting orphanages, and laughing at simple things. Tade found himself drawn to her strength and humility. One evening he asked softly, Esther, what would you say if I told you I love you? She froze, her spoon halfway to her mouth. You love me? He smiled. Yes, you. The woman who lost everything and still chooses to give. The woman who doesn't chase light, but is light. Tears filled her eyes. Tade, you deserve someone without a broken past. He shook his head. We all have pasts, Esther, but not everyone has your grace. You were broken, yes, but you shine even brighter now. That night, for the first time in years, Esther allowed herself to feel something she thought had died. Love. They dated quietly, away from the spotlight. Esther kept praying, God, if this is your plan, let it bring peace. A year later, Tade proposed in the most unexpected ways. During a charity dinner, he stood before the crowd and said, There's a woman here who has taught me what real strength looks like. She turned her pain into purpose and her tears into testimony. Her name is Esther, and I want her by my side forever. The hall erupted in applause. Esther covered her face, weeping. When she said yes, the crowd cheered. Their wedding was small but beautiful, attended by only close friends and staff from the foundation. There were no flashy decorations, no headlines, just love and gratitude. Marriage to Tade was nothing like the pain she had known before. He treated her like a queen, prayed with her, and reminded her every day how lucky he was. Then, 3 months into the marriage, Esther started feeling dizzy. She thought it was stress, until the doctor smiled after a test and said, Madam, congratulations. You're pregnant with twins. She froze. Twins? Yes, the doctor laughed. 2 healthy babies. You're blessed, madam. Tears poured down her face uncontrollably. She ran into Tade's arms and sobbed. God remembered me. After all these years, he remembered me. Tade lifted her off the ground, laughing and crying at the same time. You see, I told you your story isn't over. 9 months later, Esther gave birth to a beautiful boy and girl. She named them Fi and Fulua and Anjolaolua, meaning praise God and the mercy of God. The hospital room was filled with joy. Nurses took photos. Her sister wept, and Tade kissed her forehead. You are my miracle, he whispered. Life transformed completely. The once broken woman became a billionaire's wife, a mother, and an inspiration to thousands. She and Tade expanded their foundation, supporting infertile couples and building free maternity clinics for women in poor communities. Everywhere she went, people admired her humility. She never boasted. She never mentioned her painful past, not even when asked. But one thing remained true. She never forgot where she came from. Whenever she saw a couple struggling to conceive, she would tell them, delay is not denial. God doesn't forget. He just writes better stories. And indeed, her story was about to take a dramatic turn, because 2 years later, a gold-embossed wedding invitation would arrive in her office. An invitation from the very man who once called her barren. 2 years had passed since Esther's miracle twins were born. Her life had completely transformed. She and Tade were now one of the most admired couples in Lagos, not just for their wealth, but for their kindness. They built schools, funded hospitals, and started a program to help infertile couples who couldn't afford treatment. Every time Esther looked at her twins, she whispered, God turned my tears into testimony. But across the country, in Abuja, Femi was busy creating his own version of happiness. After divorcing Esther, he had become colder, prouder, and even more determined to prove to the world that he made the right decision. He started dating a flashy accountant named Bisi, who loved attention and luxury more than anything else. Femi didn't care. She was beautiful, fertile, and willing to make him feel like the real man he thought he was. As the months rolled by, he started planning the wedding. He wanted it grand, the biggest Abuja had seen. He told himself it was to celebrate love, but deep down it was about pride. He wanted people to know he had moved on. One night, while scrolling through social media, something froze him in place. A headline read, "Meet Esther Adeoye, billionaire philanthropist and mother of twins." His heart skipped. He clicked the article. There she was, Esther, glowing, elegant, dressed in a designer gown beside a tall, confident man holding two adorable children. His ex-wife and her twins. The caption underneath read, "Esther, co-founder of the Adeoye Foundation, shares her inspiring story from heartbreak to grace." Femi felt dizzy. His throat went dry. He zoomed in on the photo again, disbelief flooding him. "Twins?" he whispered. "No, it can't be." He slammed the phone down, angry and restless. That night, he barely slept. Jealousy burned in his chest like acid. "She's not supposed to be happy," he muttered to himself. She was the barren one. In the morning, he tried to act normal, but something inside him was broken. He told his best friend Kunle about what he'd seen. Kunle shook his head. "Guy, that's life. You left her. She found grace. Let it go." But Femi couldn't. His pride wouldn't allow it. Instead, he made a wicked decision to send her an invitation to his wedding. "She'll see that I've moved on," he told himself. "She'll see what she lost." The invitation was printed in gold and delivered by courier to the Adeoye Foundation in Lagos. When Esther's secretary brought it in, she thought it was a business event. But as soon as she opened it and saw the words, "Mr. and Mrs. Femi invite you," her heart froze for a second. She read it quietly, then smiled faintly. A smile that came from strength, not bitterness. When Tade walked into the office later that day, he noticed the golden envelope on her desk. "What's that?" he asked. "An invitation," she replied softly. "From my ex-husband." Tade frowned. "He invited you?" "Yes," she said. "He's getting married." "To mock you?" She nodded. "Probably." Tade's jaw tightened. "Then we'll go." Esther looked at him in surprise. "Go?" "Yes," he said calmly, "not to fight or to boast, but to show him what God can do with a broken story." She hesitated. "Are you sure?" Tade smiled. "My dear, when grace walks into a room, shame walks out." The wedding day arrived faster than anyone expected. Abuja buzzed with noise. It was the event of the year. Luxury cars, a famous musician performing, and journalists everywhere. Bisi looked stunning in her white gown, dripping with gold jewelry. Femi wore an expensive suit, smiling proudly at the cameras. Everything was perfect, until it wasn't. Halfway through the ceremony, one of the security men rushed to Femi. "Sir," he whispered, "there's a private jet landing at the nearby strip. They say it's here for a guest on your list. Mrs. Esther Adeoye." Femi's face drained of color. "What did you say?" "Yes, sir, a jet, and she's not alone." Moments later, a convoy of sleek black SUVs rolled into the compound. Guests turned toward the entrance, curious. The band stopped playing. The chatter faded. Then she appeared. Esther stepped out in a long, flowing sky blue gown that shimmered under the sunlight. Her head was held high, her makeup simple yet elegant. In her arms were her two beautiful twins, a boy and a girl, dressed in matching white outfits. Beside her stood her husband, Tade Adeoye, in a perfectly tailored suit. The crowd gasped. "That's her," someone whispered. "That's Femi's ex-wife." "She came in a private jet," another said. "She's married to that billionaire." Phones came out instantly. Cameras flashed. The once loud wedding turned into a stunned silence. Femi stood frozen at the altar, his mouth slightly open. His bride, BC, turned and stared in disbelief. Even the MC lost his words. Esther walked in gracefully, smiling politely, as if nothing unusual had happened. Her twins giggled softly in her arms. Tidy's hand rested gently on her back, a quiet display of support and love. Femi's mother, seated in front, nearly fainted. "Is that not?" she whispered. "My God, the barren woman?" When Esther reached the aisle, she stopped. Her eyes met Femi's. No longer no revenge, only peace. Good afternoon, Femi, she said softly. Congratulations. He swallowed hard, trying to find his voice. Esther, you came. You invited me, she said calmly. I came to wish you well. BC's smile faded. The hall was dead silent. Femi's eyes dropped to the twins. His lips trembled. They're yours? She nodded proudly. Yes, my children. And God's proof that he never forgets. The guests murmured in shock. Some clapped quietly. Others just stared. Femi felt the ground slipping beneath him. His palms were sweaty. His mind screamed, this can't be real. Tade stepped forward, smiling politely. I've heard a lot about you, Mr. Femi, he said, extending a handshake. Thank you for helping shape the woman I married. Your loss was my gain. The crowd gasped again. The statement hit like thunder. Polite yet powerful, Femi shook his hand weakly. I didn't mean to. It's all right, Tade said calmly. Life teaches us all in different ways. Esther smiled warmly. May your marriage bring you peace, Femi, truly. Then, with grace only pain could teach, she turned and began to leave with her husband. Cameras followed them as they walked out hand in hand, the twins laughing softly. Outside, the convoy waited. She got into her car, unaware that her calm exit had just made her the story of the year. Back inside, the wedding hall buzzed with whispers. That's what they call grace, one woman said. God can shame your mockers in 1 second, another added. Femi stood motionless, staring at the door. His bride glared at him. You didn't tell me she was this woman. I didn't know, he muttered helplessly. The band tried to restart the music, but the energy was gone. No one could stop talking about Esther Adioye, the woman who arrived in a private jet with twins to the wedding of the man who once called her barren. By evening, the story was everywhere online. Headlines read, Karma, billionaire's wife steals the spotlight at ex-husband's wedding. From rejected to respected, Esther Adeoye's unbelievable comeback. Femi locked himself in a room that night, staring at those headlines, tears burning his eyes. He had sent an invitation to disgrace her, but she came to show him grace. And for the first time in years, he realized the meaning of true loss. Not losing a person, but losing a destiny you were never mature enough to protect. That night after the wedding, Femi sat alone in his hotel room, his expensive suit hanging lifelessly on a chair. The laughter from guests still echoed faintly in the hallway, but inside his heart, there was only silence. The image of Esther walking into his wedding with her twins played in his head like a movie that refused to end. He poured himself a glass of wine, but it tasted bitter. Everything suddenly did. His pride, his decisions, his so-called victory, all of it had turned to dust. He had wanted to prove to the world that he had moved on, that divorcing Esther was the right thing. But instead, the woman he mocked had walked in like a queen, calm, radiant, powerful. He remembered how he once called her barren, how he laughed when his mother called her a waste of a woman. Now she had everything he once dreamed of: wealth, joy, children, peace, and he had none of it. Beasis entered the room, still in her wedding gown but furious. Do you realize how humiliated I felt today? She snapped. People were whispering, taking pictures, comparing me to her. Femi covered his face. I didn't know she'd come, he muttered. Beasis scoffed. Well, she did, and she made me look like the second choice you settled for. She stormed out, slamming the door. Femi sat in the darkness, regret pressing down on his chest like a stone. The next morning he couldn't eat. He drove alone to the hospital, the same clinic Esther had begged him to visit years ago. He walked into the fertility department and requested a test. When the results came back a week later, the doctor spoke gently. Mr. Femi, your sperm count is extremely low. Conceiving naturally would be very difficult. The words hit him like a slap. He staggered out of the clinic, the realization sinking deep. He had been the problem all along. He sat in his car, tears rolling down his cheeks. Oh God, he whispered. I destroyed my marriage with my own ignorance. Days passed. He tried to reach Esther, but she didn't pick up. He finally sent a message. I'm sorry for everything. You didn't deserve the pain I caused. I just found out the truth, and I can never forgive myself. He never got a reply, but Esther saw the message. She read it quietly, smiled sadly, then deleted it. Some doors she knew must remain closed. Months later, at a charity event in Lagos, fate made their paths cross again. Femi approached her quietly after her speech. She was surrounded by people, yet her grace made the whole room feel calm. Esther, he said softly. She turned, surprised but composed. Femi. He looked older, worn out but sincere. I came to say thank you, and I'm sorry. You were right about everything. She nodded slowly. I know, but it's not about being right, Femi. It's about being healed. He lowered his eyes. You've done well for yourself. She smiled gently. God did it. I just refused to stay broken. There was a long silence. Femi blinked back tears. If I could go back, she stopped him kindly. Don't. Some mistakes are meant to teach us, not destroy us. Tade walked over, carrying one of the twins. Honey, they're ready to go. Esther smiled. Coming. Before leaving, she looked at Femi one last time. I've forgiven you, truly. I hope you forgive yourself too. Then she walked away, her child in her arms, her peace untouchable. Femi watched her go, realizing that true strength isn't in power or pride. It's in grace. He whispered to himself, I invited her to disgrace her, but she came to show me grace. He smiled faintly, though his eyes glistened. God really has a sense of humor. That night, he knelt by his bed for the first time in years. Lord, forgive me, he prayed, and thank you for showing me that delay isn't denial. It's direction. Moral of the story. Never mock someone because of what they lack today. God can rewrite any story overnight. The person you despise in their season of pain may become the one you'll admire in their season of glory. Thank you for watching this emotional story. I hope it touched your heart and reminded you that God can rewrite any destiny, no matter how broken it seems. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe for more powerful African stories filled with lessons, suspense, and unforgettable twists. A new story is coming next. Turn on notifications so you don't miss it.